Glory to Jesus Christ. The destiny of the world depends on the dignity of human beings. Houses, it is said, will no longer have any inhabitants, and the earth will no longer display fertility. Right from the beginning, in fact, in consequence of the sin of Adam, thorns and thistles are destined to cover it. Why should you be surprised that the human race's wickedness can hinder the fertility of the earth? For our sake the earth was subjected to corruption, and for our sake it will be free of it. It exists solely for us, to serve us. Its being like this or like that has its roots in this destiny. We see proof of this in the story of Noah. Human nature had fallen into the extreme of wickedness. Everything therefore was destroyed: seeds, plants, animals, earth, sea, air, mountains, valleys, hills, cities, walls, houses, towers. A terrible flood engulfed every object. But because the human race needed to regain its proper course, the earth returned to its accustomed order and clothed itself again in the beauty that it had formerly. It is easy to understand the meaning of this. What happens to the world happens to it because for the sake of the dignity of the human race. Humankind was raised to a dignity above that of all the other visible creatures, and the earth was created specifically for humanity. This reading is taken from St. John Chrysostom's book on Isaiah, his commentary on the book of Isaiah. And just as Isaiah is a prophet, St. John Chrysostom is trying to analyze the destiny of humankind from a prophetic perspective. Well, first of all, he is stating quite clearly that the world has been created for human race. These words were written nearly 17 centuries ago. And back then, people had no idea about the creation as we know it now. They did not know about the universe, about how extensive it is, what composes it, what rules govern it. They had no idea about whether the sun is at the center or the earth is at the center. Right now we know that neither of them is at the center of anything. Well, sun is at the center of the solar system, but on a universe scale that is absolutely nothing. They did not know physics. They did not know biology. But still, St. John makes a very important and very interesting point, because he brings his knowledge of the physical world to a spiritual level. And on the spiritual level, what was valid 16 or 17 centuries ago, it is still valid now. The human race is at the center of God's creation. It does not have to be at the center of the universe, but it is at the center of God's creation. As such, it is responsible for this creation. And not only responsible in the modern sense that we hear from politicians and from people of science who are talking about ecological problems. In this case, we are also very much responsible for the world in which we live, especially for this planet, for the well-being of this planet. But what St. John is pointing out, that with our sin and also with our dignity, we govern this world. For our dignity, because of the dignity that God gave to His creation, humankind, He created this world into such a perfection. On the other hand, because of the human sin, there is destruction, there is evil, and there is death, that destroys this world? Well, this passage that we have read today, we would have to read in a spiritual key. We have to understand that it is the battle between the good and evil, the battle for human souls, does not happen on some strange spiritual plane somewhere else. No, it does happen right here. And it isn't only a spiritual battle. It is a very much physical, material battle. Remember the text from the gospel when Christ is tempted in the desert. He wasn't tempted with any spiritual thing. He was tempted with material goods, with the same things that we are tempted with, and all of them are connected, more or less, but are connected to our bodies and to this physical world. It is our dignity that we are fighting for when we are being good Christians. It is this world that we are fighting for when we are trying to take little steps on the way to salvation. And this is how we have to understand salvation. It is a much broader concept that most of the people understand. It is not something that happens between my spiritual entity and God. Salvation is not a relationship between me as a soul and God, as a spiritual being. No, it is a process that involves everything. It involves the world. It involves everything in this creation, material things in the first place. And St. John quotes from the Bible, from the story of Noah, and he says, because of human sin, the world was destroyed. Not only the man, but the world was condemned to destruction. But also because of human dignity, the world was saved and had a second chance. This is why ecological theology is very important today. It isn't. It's actually very different from ecologists that fight for the world for the sake of the world. Well, in theology, we fight for the world for the sake of human being as a creature. Well, what do we have to conclude from today's reading? What happens to the world happens to it for the sake of the dignity of human race. These are the key words that we have to understand. When we fight our spiritual battles, when we are fighting on the way to salvation, it isn't only our beings, singular beings, that are involved. It is the future of the world. It is the future of church in its integrity that is involved. Don't we pick this up from the saints who fight for their own salvation, but how many others they're bringing on the way? The same goes for us. When we fight for our salvation, when we do little good deeds every day, when we follow God's commandments every day, we bring entire world to salvation. Glory to Jesus. Hallelujah.